I feel like this one is as complex, maybe more complex and simpler. The hierarchy way to think about this one is perhaps simpler, but there's more moving parts. Once you unpack this one for us.
Yeah, so this is why a lot of us are here, right? How do I get my state withholding account? How do I register for state unemployment? I need these things because Asure is asking me for them, right? And once you register the business entity, once you registered your LLC or your corporation with the Secretary of State, now you're moving on to a next step with revenue authorities. And the challenge in a lot of states is you have, we call it payroll taxes, but it's more than one in a lot of places, right? You have your withholding, you have your employment. California has 4 different payroll taxes. Pennsylvania has 3. What do? How do you approach this situation? And the reality is you have to know first what agency to start with, right? So a lot of times it's a Department of Revenue, but in others it's bifurcated. You have a separate agency, a Department of Employer Services or Department of Labor administering the unemployment tax because it originated from a federal program in the 30s. So now you have registration with the Secretary of State, registration with Revenue, registration with Department of Labor. That's 3 different agencies that you have to work your way through to get the stuff you need to bring on board, hire and pay your employees. So again, proactive mindset, looking at all these requirements or working with somebody who does know what they're doing in each state is so important so you can meet your goals. Now, you mentioned the information, and I think that's very important, Mike. When you're registering something like an LLC with the Secretary of State, it's not easy. Most businesses don't love doing it, but it's not all that complicated in terms of what's needed. Addresses, names of officers, directors, or members, managers, not all that intensive. But when you get into your state tax registrations, the information really ratchets up. So not only are you providing that same basic core company information, you need how the company's taxed at the federal level. Is it an S Corp? Is it a partnership? Is it a C Corp? Is it something else? Is it a nonprofit? If it's a 501c, good luck. It's very challenging when you're dealing with unemployment. Right. You get into ownership, and it's not just names, it's home addresses, dates of birth, social security numbers, sensitive information that, as a service company, we get asked, why do you need this? And certainly if you're tasked with doing this inside of your own company and you ask your company owner, hey, what's your social security number? You really need to be able to show exactly why. And you can say, here's the form. But it's this additional level of information that's required, and then you get into what you're up to in that state, right? When are you hiring this employee? When's the first date that you're going to pay wages? When it comes to unemployment, like what was the first day that you exceeded $1,500 in wages, or you had more than 4 employees? You get into all of these nuanced questions that, depending on the organization who's tasked with it, it's a fact-finding mission. That it is a large body of administrative work that you need to be prepared to do so that when you get into each of these different agencies, you have all the information handy. And that's a project in and of itself.
James, I think about, if I'm a bigger company, maybe I have a director of finance who's pretty knowledgeable in the tax world, and maybe a VP of finance, CFO even, who really has a career in competencies in these areas. Maybe at that point I've got a payroll manager who is a dedicated payroll manager, doesn't do other functions. They're certified by the APA, the American Payroll Association. A lot of moving parts, but they got it. I think about the small business, right? Where I got 15 employees, and somebody from across the river applied, and they were an awesome candidate, so I just hired them. I didn't. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm an expert in remodeling kitchens and baths and helping you make your home look beautiful, and hiring great contractors and construction guys to help me out. I don't know anything about this stuff, and and because of that, I don't even think about it. So, what's your guidance for the small business or growing business that just, dare I say, accidentally doesn't even think about anything about hiring somebody from another state?
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of a short story. I was working with a Maryland-based company. I was talking to their CFO, and on our call, she told me that they had an employee starting in the state of New York in a month. And she figured, like, that's plenty of time. It's a month. I'm super busy. I'm an executive. I've got a ton of stuff to do. Who wouldn't say that, right? And she said she'd turn her attention to registering the week that the employee starts. Now, the Department of State in New York takes 3 or 4 weeks alone to process a foreign entity registration. That's step number one. Then you have to go over to the Department of Tax and Finance, making sure you have all the information, submitting that. You're adding another like 3 or 4 weeks on top of that. So that's like a 6 to 8 week total time frame for that business. And we're good. We know how to get this stuff done, but agencies are going to move at their pace. So really the best time for that business would have been a month before she called me. And probably the second best time would have been right there and getting it going. Because the requirements are what they are, but you're not usually going to be in a position to change the government processing time. So unfortunately, if you find yourself in that position where you know it's required, get on it is the answer.
And I'm not looking to scare anybody listening today, but it's important to understand consequences of not doing this. I worry more for the person. So that person, they at least knew to call you, or they at least knew to call the agency to do it. They just happen to be missing, not understand the lead times required. I'm more concerned for the entrepreneur who just doesn't even know, right? They hire the person from a different state and they had no clue, and they start paying them. Forget the lead time. They just start paying them, and they're out of compliance in a terrible way, without ever knowing it.